The police found her curled up in a bathtub, skin pale, lips blue, a trail of blood leading from a hallway. At first, they thought it was a suicide, but then they opened her phone and everything changed. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the lies we tell to protect the people we love, and the lies that destroy us. A man with a family, a teenager with dreams, and a secret so twisted, it left behind a trail of disease, heartbreak, and murder. If you think you've heard everything, you haven't heard this. Stick with us till the end, because what's coming will disturb you. Before we begin, like this video and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more intriguing stories. Now, let's begin. Summer in Crest would always smell like cut grass and chlorine. You could hear the laughter of teenagers echoing off rooftops, especially around the Greer house. A two-story colonial with a basketball hoop out front and a welcome mat that still said live, laugh, love, even though no one really did anymore. Inside, things looked perfect. David Greer, 44, worked in insurance, buttoned up, polite, the kind of man who always brought donuts to PDA meetings. His wife, Trina, was soft-spoken and sweet, often seen pruning her hydrangeas. And their daughter, Skylar, 17, was one of those girls who lit up a room without trying. Smart, kind, popular. And then there was Jade. Jade was Skylar's best friend since kindergarten. The kind of friendship forged over scraped knees, sleepovers, and whispered secrets. Jade was quieter than Skylar, maybe a bit more cynical, but fiercely loyal. Her home life was complicated. Her mom worked night shifts. Her dad was long gone. So she practically lived at the Greer's house. David always said, Jade's like one of our own. But that wasn't the truth. Not even close. It started innocently. A ride home after cheer practice. A smile that lingered too long. Compliments that felt personal. I always thought you had more maturity than the others, David said once, watching Jade from the kitchen doorway as she helped Skylar decorate cupcakes. Jade smiled awkwardly and kept piping icing. She didn't know then that it was the beginning. Weeks later, Trina left town for a church retreat. Skylar stayed over at a friend's house. Jade forgot her charge at the Greers and came back late at night. That was the first time it happened. David was sitting on the couch, half lit by the TV glow. He invited her in, said he was glad someone still appreciated conversation. She didn't plan to stay. She didn't plan anything that followed. The affair was their secret, hidden behind locked phones and passing glances. Jade was 17. David was her best friend's father, her protector, until something changed. Jade started getting sick. Nothing dramatic at first. Nausea, fatigue, a persistent fever. Doctors chalked it up to stress or a virus. But the tests kept piling up, and the answers kept getting darker. It wasn't just an infection. It was HIV. The diagnosis shattered her. She sat on the exam table, arms wrapped around her knees, as the doctor's voice became a low hum. Jade's mind replayed every moment, every lie. There had only been one person. Just one. She texted David from the parking lot. You need to get tested. He didn't reply for days. Then finally, this ends now. You can't tell anyone. She didn't know what was worse, the virus or the silence. Jade kept the secret for weeks. But something in her had snapped. She started writing it all down. Every meeting, every word, every time he told her she was different. The journal became her truth, her safety net. Skylar noticed something was off. You barely talk to me anymore, she said one afternoon, catching Jade staring blankly at her locker. Did I do something? Jade wanted to scream. She wanted to tell her everything, but she was too ashamed. And still, part of her hoped David would do the right thing. Then one morning, Skylar found the journal. Jade had left it in her backpack by accident. What Skylar read destroyed her. 3 days later, Trina found Jade in the bathtub. The razor blade had slipped from her fingers. The water was stained pink, but Jade wasn't gone yet. She clung to life for 2 more hours, long enough to say 4 words to paramedics. Tell her I'm sorry. She died at 3:17 a.m. Skylar was at her bedside, tears running down her face, clutching the journal. But it wasn't guilt that haunted her. It was rage. Because after Jade died, Skylar did what her father never expected. She turned the journal in to the police. David was arrested 2 days later. He denied everything, called Jade troubled, said she made it up, but DNA from her bedsheets told a different story. So did his positive HIV test. Still, it didn't go to trial, because someone else got to him first. 2 weeks before his court date, David was found dead in his car. carbon monoxide poisoning, engine running, garage sealed. On the dashboard, a photo of his family, and a sticky note with just one word. Sorry, but something about the scene didn't sit right with the detectives. There were no fingerprints on the key, and the garage door had been manually locked from the outside. David Greer didn't kill himself. At the funeral, Skylar stood over her father's coffin in silence. She didn't cry, not when they lowered the casket, not when people whispered behind her back. She just kept holding that same journal, the one that started it all. Detective Marquez, assigned to the case, leaned over to his partner and whispered, "You feel that? We're missing something." They were, because when the autopsy report came back, it showed sedatives in David's system, enough to knock him out cold. That's when the questions really began. Who killed David Greer? And why was there a second journal found hidden under Jade's floorboards, written after the diagnosis? Rain fell heavy the night. They exhumed Jade's secrets. Detective Marquez stood over the open floorboards of Jade Williams' bedroom, where her mother had recently found a second journal, wedged beneath her daughter's old twin bed, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. The pages were stiff, ink blurred in places by tears, or maybe by the shaking hand of a dying girl, trying to document a truth no one wanted to face. The last entry read, "He wasn't the only one. And the others? They'll never admit what they did." Beneath that was a list of 3 names. Mr. Hanley, Pastor Deeks, and Skylar. Mr. Hanley was Crestwood High's beloved history teacher. Late 30s single, wore vintage ties and spoke like every day was a TED Talk. Students loved him. Parents trusted him. He had also written Jade a college recommendation letter that was oddly personal. When questioned, he claimed Jade was like a little sister, that he'd only ever tried to help her cope. But Marquez didn't buy it, especially not after reviewing the school security footage from 6 months before Jade's death. One clip showed Jade entering Hanley's classroom after hours. No janitors, no other students. She stayed for 48 minutes, left with her head down. What happened in that classroom? Jade never told anyone, but she'd written this in her journal. Mr. H said if I told, people would think I was lying. I'm already the girl sleeping with my best friend's dad. What's one more lie? Then there was Pastor Deeks. Tall, charismatic. He'd baptized Jade when she was 10, led youth group, preached about purity every Sunday. But Jade's journal accused him of something chilling. He said confession heals all. He said touching me was his way of helping me heal. I kept thinking, maybe I deserved all this. It wasn't the kind of thing the town of Crestwood wanted to hear, especially not about their favorite man of God. But when investigators searched the church basement, they found something Deeks had tried to bury. A box. Inside, photos, letters, notes from girls whose names matched those listed in the church's youth program over the last 15 years. Some of them had left town. Others had gone quiet. Jade wasn't the only one, and she had known that. Skylar's name being in that journal was the hardest revelation of all. She was Jade's best friend, her protector, her sister in everything but blood. But her name was underlined 3 times in red ink, followed by just one sentence. She knew. She didn't stop it. At first, Skylar denied everything. I didn't know. I didn't know he was... Jade never told me she was with my dad. She never said anything like that until after she got sick. But her phone record said otherwise. Months before the affair came to light, Skylar had texted Jade, "I saw how he looks at you. If something's going on, you better tell me now." Jade replied, "Nothing's happening. Chill." But something had already happened, and Skylar had seen it. A door left open, her father standing too close. A late-night argument she overheard but never brought up again. And instead of telling someone, Skylar buried it, just like her father had buried Jade's pain. Detective Marquez kept circling back to one thing: David Greer's death, the garage, the carbon monoxide, the note, the photo, all too perfect. It was supposed to look like remorse, like a man who couldn't live with what he'd done. But Marquez saw the tape residue under the steering wheel. The lab confirmed sedatives in David's blood that would have made it impossible for him to operate a vehicle. Someone drugged him. Someone locked the garage from the outside. Someone wanted to make it look like suicide. And there was only one person with motive, means, and access to both sedatives in that house: Trina Greer. Trina had stood by her husband's casket with dry eyes. She organized the wake with robotic efficiency, offered casseroles and polite nods. But grief? No one saw it. Marquez visited her a month after David's death. She was in the kitchen, wearing yellow gloves, scrubbing the already clean stove. "Still hard, huh?" he asked, watching her scrub. She didn't look up. Harder things have happened. When asked about Jade, her response was cold. "That girl came into my house and wrecked my family. And now everybody's acting like she's a victim. Marquez asked if she believed her husband abused Jade. She didn't answer, but her knuckles went white around the sponge. Then came a breakthrough from the most unlikely source. Maya Chun, a quiet girl who used to hang around Skylar and Jade back in middle school. She came forward with something shocking. A voicemail from Jade, recorded just 2 days before she died. In it, Jade's voice cracked under tears. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. They want me quiet. I thought I could handle the guilt. But now I think I've been poisoned. I keep waking up dizzy. I don't even remember what I eat anymore. I think it's Trina. I think she knows everything." Detectives requested a toxicology reevaluation. Turns out, Jade hadn't just cut herself. Her bloodstream had high levels of benzodiazepines, commonly used for anxiety or to sedate. She was too disoriented to fight back, too weak to crawl far before the blade did the rest. The last page of Jade's second journal had been torn, ripped right down the spine. It was eventually found buried in the trash behind the church. On it, in smeared ink, "Skylar isn't innocent. Trina saw everything. But the one you really need to find is Vanessa. She knows the beginning." But no one knew who Vanessa was. Not yet. Marquez dug through school records, church rosters, youth programs. Finally, in a forgotten photo from a church retreat 10 years earlier, he saw her. Vanessa Kane, former youth counselor. She left town abruptly in 2018. No forwarding address. But Jade had written her name last. And according to Jade's mother, Vanessa had been the first adult Jade ever trusted. The question was, why did she run? And what did she see that made her disappear? Detective Marquez finally tracked down a number, an unlisted landline registered under V. Kane in a small town 2 states over. He called. A woman answered, her voice shaky, fragile. "Vanessa Kane?" A pause. "Who is this?" "I'm investigating the death of Jade Williams. She mentioned you in her journal." Silence. Then a single breath. "I told her to leave the Greer house. I told her years ago, before anything happened." "Why?" Marquez asked. The line went quiet. Then she whispered, "Because what David did to Jade, he did to someone else first. And I was the first." The woman on the phone wasn't just a name in Jade's journal. She was the story's beginning. Vanessa Kane had vanished from Crestwood nearly 7 years ago, leaving behind whispers, rumors that she had a nervous breakdown, that she stole church money, that she ran from something shameful. But when Detective Marquez sat across from her in a faded diner 2 states away, it was clear she hadn't run from guilt. She had run from a predator. Vanessa was smaller than Marquez imagined, soft-voiced, eyes that rarely made contact. She pulled a thin, worn file from her coat. Inside were old photos, church outings, sleepovers, a youth retreat by the lake. In each one, a younger Vanessa smiled nervously beside a towering man in clerical robes. "Pastor Deeks. He told me I was special," she whispered, "that God had chosen me to serve him in ways no one else could. I was 15. She paused. "And he wasn't the only one." Marquez leaned forward. "Who else?" She slid a second photo across the table. This time a group shot at a backyard cookout. Vanessa in the front, awkward and quiet. A hand rested on her shoulder. "David Greer. He wasn't a father back then," she said. "He was just one of the church's volunteers. But he was already who he was. He liked them young. The church knew. They moved me out of town before I could speak. It wasn't just negligence. It was calculated." Vanessa said she confided in a deacon once. Told him about the late-night visits, the car rides, the time she woke up in the church basement, sore and confused. 2 days later, her mother was offered a job across the state. The church paid the moving expenses. "They told me it was God's will," Vanessa said, tears pooling in her eyes. "They erased me, like they've erased dozens of others." Marquez took the file. Inside were letters, unopened, addressed to church leadership, to the school board, to a local news outlet. None of them responded. But one letter, scrawled in careful handwriting, was addressed to Jade. "You don't know me, but I know what you're going through. I know his face. You're not alone. Please get out before it's too late." She never mailed it. Back in Crestwood, the toxicology report confirmed something everyone feared. Jade's system showed prolonged exposure to barbiturates, trace amounts found in her food and water. But the poison hadn't killed her. The stab wound had. It was deliberate, deep, final, and too clean for a suicide attempt, which meant only one thing. Jade was murdered. Marquez turned his attention back to Trina Greer, David's wife, her bitterness, her detachment, her strange calm after her husband's death. And then there was this. The sedatives found in David's blood matched those in Jade's. She had killed them both. Trina cracked during the second interview. "I knew for months," she said, her voice flat. "I heard them one night. David was in Jade's room. She thought I was asleep. She clenched her hands. He told me it was a mistake, that he loved our daughter too much to throw everything away. But then Jade got sick, and I saw how he looked at her, like she was his prize, like I was just a witness to their little secret. So you poisoned Jade? Marquez asked. Trina shook her head. No, I wanted her gone. Yes, but I couldn't do it. Not really. I just watched her waste away. But your husband? She stared at Marquez for a long moment. I waited until he passed out, taped the garage lock. I made it look like remorse. And the knife? That's when Trina went silent. She wasn't the one who stabbed Jade. Skylar broke down just 2 weeks later, after learning the details of her father's toxicology. She visited Jade's grave at dusk, fell to her knees, and whispered the words no one expected. I did it. I didn't mean to. She wouldn't stop. In the interview room, her hands shook. I confronted her that night. About my dad. About everything. She said she didn't choose it. That he made her feel needed. And I lost it. I screamed. She screamed. She tried to cut herself again. I reached the knife, just to stop her. She sobbed into her hands. But I slipped. I didn't mean to. God, I didn't mean to. The coroner confirmed the angle of the wound. Not self-inflicted, but also not expert. Clumsy. Hesitant. An accident. Born from fury and heartbreak. Skylar was 17. She was tried as a juvenile. But Skylar wasn't the only one held accountable. Trina Greer was convicted of second-degree murder for the death of her husband, Pastor Deeks. After Vanessa's testimony and the discovery of decades-old letters and photos, he was charged with multiple counts of sexual assault and obstruction of justice. Mr. Hanley resigned in disgrace. Jade's journal was enough for the school board to press criminal charges, and the church, once the soul of Crestwood, became a hollow, rotting shell, a place no one walked into anymore. Jade was just 17 when she died. 17, with a soft laugh, a gift for writing, and a future she never got to live. She was groomed, manipulated, failed by everyone around her, not just her abuser, but the ones who looked away, the ones who stayed quiet, the ones who said, "That's not my business." But silence is complicity. It always is. This story reminds us that predators don't always wear masks. Sometimes they sit at the dinner table. Sometimes they preach. Sometimes they smile at you in school halls. And too often, victims are punished for speaking. Jade wasn't just a name in a case file. She was a child whose story became a warning that we must listen, believe, and protect. If this story moved you, don't let Jade's voice fade into silence. Comment below your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed someone hiding pain behind a smile? Like this video if you believe every victim deserves to be heard. Share this story, because you never know who might be suffering in silence. Subscribe for more true crime stories that shine light in the darkest corners. We tell these stories not just for the drama, but for the truth. And the truth is, every voice matters. Every life counts. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never be afraid to speak up.